Hi everyone, my name is Zach and this is what you look like after working for 60 hours in 2 weeks on one project beside your regular job. Anyway, I have to go to the hairdresser. I look like shit. Yeah, in this video I want to show you the workflow, how I've created this image here, the journey in Blender and Photoshop mainly. This project was created last year for an ArtStation challenge with the topic The Journey, and I entered the 3D transport category and I won the 3rd place. And for this project and also nearly all of my past projects, I recorded everything. So this took me about 60 hours. I had these massive recordings, and since a long time, I mean this is nearly a year ago since I created this, I wanted to create something for you guys, something to show you the workflow of this creation. And now I finally found some time to put something together. And since these are 60 hours, I decided to make different things. First of all, I've created this video here. This will be something like a workflow video. You will see some parts of the time-lapse and I will talk about what I'm doing there to give you an idea of the main workflow I used for creating this image. And then, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into this project, I have some additional videos and project files on Gumroad. There you get an about 6 hours long time-lapse separated into different parts. These are not commented time-lapse, that means that are just silent time-lapses. I hope they are not too fast so that you can follow everything pretty good. I don't want to give away the real-time videos because who in the world would watch 60 hours of videos? Besides that, I have created 5 analysis videos. That means I just open some files and talk about how I approach the concept, the modeling, the shading and so on, so that you get some ideas and inspirations for your projects. And in addition to that, you get the project files, the blend file, PSD files, high resolution render, concept art and so on. But I had to exclude the trees, the grass and the shaders from the blend file because that is stuff from add-ons and asset packs, so I had to remove them, sorry for that. But you can watch the whole 3D model of this car, of this robot thing. So the whole project should not be something like a tutorial, recreate this thing. It's more like a whole project to give you inspiration, ideas for workflows, ideas how to approach things in Blender to create a nice vehicle scene, for example. And also last year I rendered some animations of this vehicle, so basically just a camera flying around. And I didn't publish this until yet. It's not the highest quality, just 200 samples in cycles. But yeah, I thought I will show them first and after that I will talk about the workflow. Alright, enjoy and have fun! Alright, let's start with step number 1, idea and concept. So the topic was given, the journey, and also it was restricted to vehicles. So a few days before I started this challenge, I saw this vehicle standing around in my city. It was a Lada Niva. Pretty nice car, and I thought, wow, this car looks nice and it's perfect for the thing I wanted to create. Since I love to combine cars, old rusty cars with robot legs, I had this idea pretty fast on combining this car with robot legs, and for being on the journey it would be nice to have a kind of trailer there. So I combined this car with a trailer. And you might think, why using robot legs instead of wheels? Well, it's a good question, but with robot legs you basically can walk over every kind of surface. With wheels you just can drive on roads and streets, so you're restricted to some areas. But yeah, if you want to go off-road, then robot legs might be useful. So I started with drawing some concepts using Mischief and a little bit Creator. And as you can see, I really fast had the idea of the car and I put it into different environments, but I didn't really know what kind of environment I wanted to use in the end. So I ended with just drawing a more detailed concept of the car. With these concepts and ideas, I went over to step number 2, the Blockout. That means I just create the vehicle and the environment with very simple objects, which you can do pretty quick. With that you get a nice idea of the shapes, the proportions, you can try things out, you can play with the camera angle. So this is extremely helpful to get an idea of your 3D scene. And as you can see, I just played around with one of the concepts I created with this river. But yeah, in the end I won't use this as the final concept. Also, I draw another concept, but yeah, it still wasn't the final one. At this point I really was unsure what I wanted to use. And also I draw another variation of this car, a little bit different than before. And this should also be the final concept for my 3D vehicle. And I thought, well, I don't know what environment I wanted to use, but I want to create this vehicle anyway. So I thought, let's just start with that and care about the environment later. So the first blockout I did was pretty simple, so I wanted to create a more detailed blockout. So I just recreated this blockout with more details, but still simple shapes and pretty rough and quickly. And that will be the perfect foundation for the modeling process. And as you can see, these little characters here are perfect for reference in terms of scaling and so on. Certainly for the Lada Niva I just used the real world scales, and the rest around it I scaled according to this car. Okay, let's go on to step number 3, the modeling of the vehicle. This was the most time consuming step in this project. This took about 30 hours. And here it was extremely helpful to have this blockout, because basically I just started to replacing these low poly objects. So I started with the body of the car because this was the most obvious element of this vehicle, because it was created from a real world reference. And it was also helpful that I created the blockout in the right measurement. Also, if you have this blockout and then start replacing the objects, you always can see a rough version of the final object. And then when it's getting more and more detailed, it's just amazing to see that. And it's much more motivating also if this is not the final model, but you get an idea of how the final model could look like. So all in all, I just used the very basic subsurf and mirror modifier modeling, and also in many parts I used the solidify modifier to add thickness. After I was done with the body of the car, I added more and more details, and for that I just looked at different reference images online and then I recreated this, but just by looking at these images, so I don't measure things and so on. So this body of the car was really a nice reference for scaling all the other objects. So the other important part, like the trailer and so on, and the legs are just created from my mind basically. Certainly I watched on some reference images, but I don't recreated something one-to-one as I saw it there. So after I was done with all the important parts of this car, I started to create a very simple shape for the trailer.
And there I also added the windows and the door to get an idea where I can add more details later. After that, I went over to the legs. This is a really complicated topic, and because of that, I created a simple sketch to get an idea of the function from these legs. After that, I recreated this in 3D, but since this sketch was really rough, I had to imagine a lot of things while creating this in 3D. And yeah, these legs would never work in real life, but it should look very complex and cool. So first I modeled the leading parts, and after that I just added all these pistons and this armor and all these other details like screws and cables. Cables are really nice because they are adding much more visual detail than this object actually have. So if you're creating a robot or anything like this, just add a few cables here and there and this will look much more detailed than before. For the feet, I modeled a whole tire, and then after that I cut this into pieces and put it on the legs. And it's pretty nice because this way the car looks really self-made. So if you use objects from the real world and maybe use it for different purpose or in other ways than they used to be, and if you can recognize them on the object, that looks pretty nice and people can better relate to this. After I was done with the front legs, I just duplicated and mirrored them to the back, and then I add some variations there so that the legs are not looking the same. And also the rear legs should look stronger because there's this big trailer on the back. This should somehow look realistic. But all in all, I reused many parts of the legs over and over again, so this just saves a lot of time and work. So a special challenge for me was to combine the car, the legs and the trailer. So all the parts where they are meeting each other are hard to imagine. So I thought about it, how to make this easy and quick. And I thought, well, just let's add some tarpaulin there. So all the open holes, basically I closed with a simple mesh. And then in the sculpt mode, I added some folds here and there. And then it looks really nice because all these parts, which could be quite complex and complicated, I just added this claw thing over it and it just looked perfect. Also the part on the button, there was a big hole basically. I just added a very simple plane and add some holes here and there where this was necessary, so also pretty simple stuff. So the most work went into adding details and this took a lot of time. And yeah, since there are so much details, I don't want to talk about this in detail. And yeah, in the end, as I was done with the car, I just used the 3D layers to manage all these parts, parented them and moved them around on the 3D layers so that I have a good overview. And yeah, voila, the car was done. So next part, number 4, shading. The vehicle was done and I just had a few days left to the deadline and I had to create the environment, the shading, the whole rendering and compositing. So not much time left, and because of that I decided to use the Cycles Material Vault by Reynante Martinez to shade my scene. This is basically a paid library of very nice looking Cycles materials, so I definitely can recommend this. For the most materials I just drag and drop them on the objects, and with all these preset sliders I just adjusted the materials in terms of color, roughness and all that stuff to my needs. Some of the materials I adjusted also in the node tree, a little bit more detailed, and for some parts I created my very own materials. For the lighting I used an HDRI map which I put in the background of the scene, and then it lights up my whole 3D scene very realistic. I used an HDRI map from hdrihaven.com, which is run by Greg Zahl, and it's also a very awesome place to get high resolution HDRIs for a very low price and also low res resolution for free. So definitely check this site out. And besides the HDRI maps, I also added 2 spot lamps to just highlight some of the parts which you can see in the foreground so that they are not too dark. So all in all, this process was pretty quickly done, and so I had the final shaded vehicle. Then I went over to step number 5, the environment. Now it was time to think a little closer about what environment I want to create. And since I didn't have much time left, I had to hurry up. So, and I really like to combine the normal environment you know from your place you live in with some sci-fi stuff. So I thought I have to put this vehicle in some very common environment. And a few months before I started this project, I saw this very nice 3D render of Denis Lebedev, if I pronounce this right. And I had this always in my mind. And since I had so many ideas for environments I can put this car in, I thought, well, I use this image as inspiration and create something similar with this field, morning look, and so on. So this was definitely a big inspiration for me for creating this environment. So the ground was created with a very simple dynamic topology sculpting. Later on, I converted this to a multi-resolution modifier sculpting, which was better for changing resolution and so on. So and after I was done with the ground in the foreground, basically I just rendered a quick image, put it into Photoshop, and then just composite and overpainted some stuff in there to get some ideas how I can improve this render. So later on I added the trees using the paid add-on The Grove 3D, which is awesome to get really realistic 3D trees directly in Blender. For this field in the foreground I added some clumps of soil, just simple objects with some displace modifiers on it, and with a particle system I distributed them on the ground. And since I really don't have much time left, I purchased the grass essentials from Blender Guru to place all the grass and the foliage on the ground. And this really saves my butt because I just had a few hours left to get this image done. Because for an old project I also had created grass on my own and I know how to do it, but it takes a lot of time. So I used this way to meet the deadline. So then to add some life to my scene, I just quickly used an image from Pixabay of a dog and of a bird. And then I project this image on a simple object and then place these objects in my scene, so I add life to my scene without adding a whole human character. And this also helps to telling the story. Yeah, the environment was done, the car was done. Let's move on to the final step, the render and compositing. So after I rendered the raw image, an ambient occlusion pass and a mist pass, I put all this stuff into Photoshop and combined this. So for the background I just used an image of a sky. The ambient occlusion layer adds some extra shadows in all the corners, so the shadows gets a little bit more contrast. Then I added the mist layer, which adds the fog effect, so it feels like a morning mood. For the smoke I just used a photo from textures.com and put it on the right spot in the scene. So no smoke simulations there, this was done pretty quick. And with some little dust particles I added here and there, it added more life to the scene. Yeah, and then I added some final touches with color correction and so on, so we get this really nice morning feel. Yeah, and that's it. I was done before the deadline, I submitted this image, and it was a huge surprise as I realized that I've won the 3rd place. I never imagined that this would happen. So yeah, this was a very nice experience and I can recommend everyone to join challenges like on ArtStation or on my personal weekly CG challenge. Check out weeklycgchallenge.com. There you can participate in competitions every 2 weeks and win some awesome prizes. For example, you can also win the Cycles Material World, HDRI Haven, HDRI Maps, and also the Grass Essentials from Blender Guru. So all the tools I used for creating this image you also can win on Weekly CG Challenge.
Alright guys, that's it with this video. I hope you enjoyed it, learned maybe a few things. If so, tell your friends about it and share this video. And as mentioned in the beginning, if you want to know more about this project, if you want to have the project files, time-lapse and additional videos, you can download this on Gumroad. The link is in the video description. Thanks a lot for watching, and by the way, I have recorded also my other projects like this little cute monster or this flying car, also my Sculpt January sculptings. Tell me in the comments if you want to see more videos like this explaining how I created my 3D artwork. Thanks for watching and we see us in the next video. Goodbye.